The jungle world of Naros 4 was not a place where anyone survived for long. The air was heavy with smoke. Rain burned like acid on the skin, and giant beasts screamed in the night. To most species, it was a death sentence, but for Sergeant Ethan Cole, survival was something humans did best. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, had crashed 3 weeks ago after being shot down by pirates. He had lost his squad. No rescue beacon had answered. His food was almost gone, and the nights were getting colder. Still, Ethan refused to die. He had been a soldier for 12 years. He knew how to live when the universe wanted him dead. He built a small shelter out of the broken hull plates and covered it with leaves to block the toxic rain. Every day he hunted small lizard-like creatures with a sharpened metal rod. Every night he sat under the dull blue glow of the ship's last working panel, talking to himself just to stay sane. Then one night, he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A soft cry. At first he thought it was a trick of the wind, but then it came again, weak, frightened, and close. "Someone's out there," he muttered, grabbing his plasma sidearm and flashlight. The sound came from the east, near where the smaller escape pods had crashed. He moved carefully, boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. The jungle hissed around him. Strange insect wings shimmered in the mist. He pushed aside a fallen tree and froze. A small pod lay half buried in the dirt. Its silver walls were scorched black. Steam rose from cracks in the hull. Inside, through a shattered window, he saw movement. A tiny shape curled up and crying. Ethan's instincts screamed to stay away. This could be alien tech, maybe radioactive, maybe dangerous. But the sound? That crying, it was the sound of a child. He ran forward, forcing the pod's door open with his crowbar. Inside was a little alien child, no more than 6 or 7 years old by human guess. Its skin shimmered silver under his flashlight, and its large 4 eyes blinked in terror. A thin tail twitched against the metal floor. Hey, Ethan said softly, lowering his weapon. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The child whimpered and tried to back away, but hit the wall. It had a glowing pendant around its neck, a strange blue gem pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Blood or something close to it oozed from a cut on its arm. Ethan sighed. "You're hurt." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his med kit. "Let me help." The child didn't understand the words, but it seemed to recognize the tone. It stopped struggling. Ethan gently cleaned the wound, used a bandage, and wrapped the arm tight. The alien flinched once, then relaxed. "There you go," he said. "All patched up." The child looked at him, 4 eyes wide and shining. Then in a soft, trembling voice, it whispered something. A single word that sounded like human. Ethan blinked. "Yeah, human, that's me." The child repeated the word, slower this time, as if testing it. "Huh, man," he smiled despite himself. "You got it, kid." He carried the little one back to his shelter that night. It was light, barely half the size of a human child, and cold to the touch. When he set it near the heater, it curled up and slept instantly. Ethan sat across from it, cleaning his weapon and shaking his head. "Great," he muttered. "Now I'm babysitting an alien." But when morning came, he couldn't help but feel different. For the first time since the crash, there was another living being beside him. The child watched him curiously, tilting its head at everything he did, sharpening a knife, boiling water, patching his jacket. It made small chirping sounds, pointing at things. Ethan began to speak slowly, showing it names. "Knife," he said, holding it up. "Fi," the child repeated carefully. He grinned. "Close enough." He pointed at himself. "Ethan, Tanned, it said, then pointed at its chest. "Saris, huh? Nice to meet you, Saris." It smiled, a shy, innocent smile that reached all 4 of its eyes. Days passed. Ethan hunted food for both of them. Saris followed him everywhere, curious about every plant, every noise, every tool. She laughed when he pretended to stumble and cried whenever thunder rolled across the jungle sky. At night, she would sit close to him by the small heater, her silver skin reflecting the orange light. Ethan told her stories she couldn't understand. Stories about Earth, about oceans, dogs, and how rain wasn't supposed to burn holes in your jacket. She listened anyway, her head resting on his arm. He had seen death, war, and pain in his life, but watching Sarah sleep peacefully made him feel something new, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. One day, while scavenging near the crash site, Ethan noticed the pendant around Saris's neck glowing brighter. It pulsed faster, like it was reacting to something in the air. "Hey, Saris," he said, kneeling beside her. "What's that thing anyway?" She touched it gently. "Home," she whispered. Ethan's heart skipped. "Home? You mean your people might be looking for you?" She nodded slowly. "Mother, come." He looked at the dark sky. There was no sign of ships. But the idea gave him a spark of hope. If someone was coming for her, maybe they'd rescue him too. Still, he couldn't let his guard down. He knew too well what aliens sometimes did to humans, especially on outer rim worlds. He kept their camp hidden, covering the shelter with thick leaves. Every night he checked his gun and sensors twice. He didn't know who might come first, rescuers or raiders. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Ethan woke to the sound of thunder. But this was no storm. The ground shook and the sky glowed red. He ran outside and saw ships, hundreds of them, sleek, silver, and alien. They filled the sky like a metal storm. Saris ran out, her eyes wide. She looked up and whispered one word, "Mother." Ethan felt his heart drop. "They're yours?" he asked quietly. She nodded, smiling through tears. "Mother, come." The ships were landing, and massive dropships cutting through the clouds, spraying dust and light. Ethan didn't know if they'd consider him a savior or a threat. He knelt beside Saris. "Listen, kid," he said, his voice tight. "If things go bad, you run, okay?" She didn't understand. She just held his hand tighter. Moments later, alien soldiers appeared, tall, armored, with glowing blue weapons. Their faces were smooth and sharp, like living statues. They surrounded him instantly. Ethan raised his hand slowly. "Easy now." "I'm not your enemy," Saris shouted something in her own language, pointing at him. The soldiers froze. One of them knelt. Before her, then all of them did. Ethan blinked. "What the hell?" A voice came through the air, deep and commanding. "Protect the air. Lower your weapons." A tall figure stepped from the largest ship, graceful, regal, her silver robes glowing under the twin suns. Her eyes were like polished crystal, and her presence made the air feel heavy. Saris cried out, "Mother!" and ran to her. The woman caught her in her arms, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the glowing pendant on her daughter's neck, then at Ethan, a lone human standing among armored troops. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the queen of the Varine said softly, "You saved my child?" Ethan nodded once. "Found her in the wreck. Just did what anyone would do." The queen studied him, her eyes filled with something strange. Not just gratitude, but curiosity. "Not everyone would have done what you did, human." Ethan shrugged. "Guess I'm not everyone." The queen's lips curved slightly. "No, you are not." She turned to her guards. "Bring him aboard. He is to be treated as an honored guest." Ethan frowned. "Wait, what?" But before he could finish, Saris ran back and grabbed his hand, refusing to let go. The queen watched them for a moment, something unreadable in her gaze. Then she said softly, almost to herself, "The stars themselves will remember this human." As the ships lifted off, leaving the burning jungle behind, Ethan looked down one last time at the wreckage of his ship, his old life. He had no idea that saving one alien child would change the fate of 2 entire species. Ethan Cole had been on many ships in his life, but never one like this. The Varine royal ship was a floating palace. Its walls shimmered like liquid silver, and the air hummed softly, alive with unseen energy. Soldiers lined every hallway, tall, graceful beings in glowing armor who watched his every move. He could feel their eyes on him as he walked beside Saris and the queen. They whispered among themselves, their words low and sharp. Ethan couldn't understand their language, but he could tell what they were thinking. Why is a human here? Why is he walking beside the royal bloodline? Saris, the small alien child he had rescued, didn't seem to notice the tension. She walked proudly beside him, holding his hand, her silver eyes shining with excitement. Ethan glanced down at her. "You sure this is okay, kid? I'm not exactly dressed for a royal visit." He was still wearing a torn combat suit and boots covered in jungle mud. Compared to the glowing marble floors, he looked like someone who had crawled out of a cave. Saris just smiled up at him and said, "Human brave." Ethan couldn't help but grin. "Guess I'll take that as a compliment." When they reached the main chamber, Ethan stopped breathing for a second. It was massive. High ceilings covered in glowing patterns, banners flowing like living light, and at the far end stood a throne that seemed carved from crystal itself. Around it, alien nobles stood in silence, their robes gleaming, their expressions cold. The Queen of the Vereen took her place on the throne. Her presence filled the room like thunder in the air. Her silver hair floated gently as if moved by energy, and her 4 eyes glowed with intelligence and command. She gestured lightly. "Bring him forward." Ethan swallowed hard and stepped up to the center of the room. He'd faced pirates, mercenaries, and alien beasts, but nothing made him as nervous as standing before an alien queen surrounded by hundreds of staring nobles. Cirrus ran to her mother's side, speaking quickly in her own language, pointing at Ethan. The queen listened quietly. Then she rose from her throne and descended the steps toward him. Every soldier in the room went down to one knee. Ethan just stood there, unsure what to do. The queen stopped in front of him. For a moment, she simply looked at him, studying the rough human, the scars on his hands, the tired but kind eyes. Then she spoke in calm, measured English. "You are the one who saved my daughter." Ethan nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Found her in the wreck. Did what I could." The queen tilted her head slightly. "You were stranded, alone, dying on a death world. And yet you chose to protect her." He shrugged. "She needed help. That's what humans do." A ripple went through the nobles, quiet whispers of disbelief. The queen's lips curved slightly. "You speak simply, human, but your actions are not simple." She turned and addressed her court. Her voice echoed across the hall. "This human, Ethan Cole, found our princess among the ruins of Naros IV. He fed her, healed her wounds, and kept her alive in a place where even Vereen soldiers would perish. He is no enemy." Her gaze hardened. "He is a protector." The room fell silent. The nobles looked uneasy but didn't dare speak. Then the queen looked back at Ethan. "For saving my child, I offer you the protection of the Vereen crown. You will be treated as a guest and as family until you choose to leave." Ethan blinked, unsure what to say. Thank you, Your Majesty. That's very generous." Sarah clapped her hands happily. "Ethan, stay." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, looks like I don't have much choice, huh?" In the days that followed, Ethan tried to adjust to life on the royal ship. He had his own quarters, a bright room with soft walls that glowed when he entered. A strange machine produced food that actually tasted better than his rations. Still, he couldn't relax. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. The soldiers watched him with suspicion. The servants bowed but whispered when he passed. Even the nobles avoided speaking to him directly, as if afraid he might be contagious. Only Sarah treated him the same. Every morning she would burst into his room, dragging him outside to explore the ship's gardens, a vast hall filled with floating plants and glowing fountains. She loved to learn. Ethan taught her human words: tree, water, friend. She laughed when she said them wrong, and he laughed with her. One afternoon, the queen found them sitting by the fountain. Cirrus was splashing water while Ethan told her a story about Earth's oceans. When the queen approached, Ethan stood quickly. "Your Majesty," the queen smiled faintly. "Relax, human. You need not bow every time I enter a room." "Force of habit," he said. She looked at her daughter, who was laughing and chasing a fish-shaped drone. "She has not laughed like this in years," the queen said quietly. Ethan's eyes softened. "She's a strong kid. Smart, too." The queen turned to him. "You speak of her as if she were your own." He hesitated. "Guess I do. When you spend weeks trying to keep someone alive in a jungle full of monsters, you start to care." For a moment, the queen said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. "In the Vereen Empire, strength is shown through power and control. But you show another kind of strength, the kind that protects without expecting reward." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "I just did what was right." Her eyes met his, sharp and curious. "That is what makes humans dangerous. You act from heart, not from logic. And yet perhaps that is also your greatest gift." But not everyone saw Ethan as a hero. Among the Vereen nobles, jealousy and anger grew. Some saw him as a threat, an outsider who had won the queen's favor too easily. Late one evening, Ethan walked alone through the silent corridors. He had just left the training deck where he had shown a few curious soldiers how humans fought hand to hand. They were shocked at his speed and toughness, He was halfway to his quarters when he heard the sound of metal scraping. He turned and saw 3 armored figures in the shadows. "Evening, fellas," he said carefully. "You lost?" They didn't answer. Instead, one lunged at him with a blade that glowed blue. Ethan dodged, his instincts kicking in. He grabbed a loose metal bar from the wall and blocked the second strike. Sparks flew. The attackers were fast, faster than any human. But they didn't expect a soldier who had survived on Naros Torture. Ethan ducked, rolled, and slammed his bar into one alien's chest. The armor cracked and the soldier fell. The other 2 closed in. Ethan barely avoided a strike that sliced through the wall beside him. He swung his makeshift weapon, hitting one across the head. The third attacker raised his blade for the kill. "Stop!" a voice screamed. It was Saris. The child stood at the end of the hallway, her pendant glowing bright blue. Behind her, the Queen appeared, flanked by royal guards. The attackers froze instantly. The Queen's eyes blazed with cold fury. "You dare raise weapons in my palace?" The soldiers dropped to their knees, trembling. Ethan, breathing hard, lowered his bar. They weren't exactly here for a friendly chat. The Queen stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Guards, seize them!" The attackers were dragged away, begging for mercy. The Queen turned back to Ethan. "You are hurt." He glanced at a cut on his arm. "Just a scratch." Saris ran to him, tears in her eyes. "Ethan hurt?" He knelt and patted her head. "It's okay, kid." "I'm fine." The Queen watched silently. Her gaze softened, then hardened again. "There are those who cannot accept your presence here, human. They fear what they do not understand." Ethan stood. "Yeah, happens everywhere. Doesn't mean I'll stop trying." The Queen studied him for a moment. Then she said softly, "You risked your life for my daughter once. And again tonight. Tell me, Ethan Cole, why?" He looked her in the eye. "Because she's a kid. Because I care. And because someone has to." For a long time, the Queen didn't reply. Then she said, "Perhaps the stars sent you here for a reason." She turned away, her robes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Rest now, human. Tomorrow I will decide how to deal with those who attacked you." As she walked away, Saris looked up at Ethan and whispered, "Mother angry." Ethan smiled tiredly. "Good, maybe they'll think twice next time." He didn't know it yet, but that small moment, and standing bloodied before a furious queen, would change everything. The nobles would whisper his name in fear and awe. The Queen would begin to see him not as an outsider, but as something more. The next morning, the Vereen Palace was silent. The kind of silence that meant fear. Everyone had heard about what happened last night. The human who fought off 3 assassins with nothing but a metal bar. Some whispered he was dangerous. Others whispered he was blessed. But one thing was clear. No one dared look down on him anymore. Ethan Cole, a human soldier from Earth, had earned the title that would echo through the Vereen halls, the protector of the princess. Ethan didn't ask for the title. When the Queen had announced it before her court, he had simply stood there confused while the nobles bowed reluctantly. Now, wherever he went, guards stepped aside, and servants bowed deeply. He hated it. He wasn't used to this kind of life, polished floors, golden corridors, and alien nobles who spoke in careful fake smiles. He would rather be fixing engines or scouting a jungle than attending fancy dinners with people who clearly wanted him gone. But there was one reason he stayed. Saris. The little princess followed him everywhere. From sunrise to sunset, she was at his side, cheerful, curious, and full of questions. "Ethan," she said one morning while watching him clean his weapon, "why fight?" He smiled at her innocent tone. "To protect. To keep bad people away." She tilted her head. "Mother say warriors fight for honor. You fight for care?" "Yeah," Ethan said, tightening a screw on his rifle. "For care. For people we love." Saris thought about it for a long time, then nodded seriously. Ethan strong, but kind strong. That simple line stayed in his head for days. Life in the Vereen Palace was not easy for a human. The Vereen nobles were proud. They believed their empire was superior to all others. To them, humans were primitive, emotional, reckless, too soft. But the Queen's daughter loved this human. And the Queen herself respected him. That made him dangerous. At dinner, Ethan sat beside Saris at a long, glowing table filled with exotic food. The nobles ate in silence, sneaking glances at him. He poked at the food cautiously. "You sure this is safe to eat?" Saris laughed. "Good food. Not poison." The nobles across the table went still. Ethan looked up. "Did I say something funny?" One noble with golden armor spoke coldly. "For your kind, perhaps. For ours, it is a sacred meal. Eat carefully, human." Ethan gave a small smile. "I'll try not to offend the salad." A few nearby guards tried to hide their laughter. The queen raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Saris giggled so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Ethan winked at her. "Told you humor is a human weapon too." That night, stories of the laughing human spread through the palace. Some nobles were furious that he made jokes in front of the queen. Others whispered that maybe this human wasn't weak after all. The days passed quickly. Ethan began training the palace guards in human fighting techniques, close combat, reaction drills, and teamwork. At first, the Vereen soldiers thought it was pointless. They had energy blades and plasma shields. Why fight with fists? Then Ethan showed them. He moved fast, dodging, countering, using balance and power. His punches cracked armor plates. His throws sent tall aliens crashing to the floor. When he helped them up, he smiled. "See? Strength isn't just in weapons. It's in will." The queen often watched from the balcony. She admired the way he taught. Patient, focused, without arrogance. And Saris, of course, cheered loudly every time he won. "Ethan's strong," she shouted proudly. He laughed. "Don't tell your mom I hit her guards that hard, okay?" The queen's amused voice came from above. "She already knows, human." Ethan froze. Saris giggled again. But peace never lasts long. Not in royal palaces. Not among jealous hearts. In the dark halls below the throne room, a group of nobles met in secret. "He grows too close to the queen," one hissed. "And the princess calls him family," another added. "That human is turning them soft. He must be removed, quietly, before his influence spreads." They planned carefully. No blades this time. No obvious attack. They would use words, not weapons. They would make the queen believe the human was dangerous. It began with whispers, a stolen relic, a guard who vanished, a rumor that Ethan was spying for humans. Ethan noticed the way people's eyes changed when he walked by. The fear, the doubt. He didn't know why. Until one evening he was summoned to the queen's private chamber. She sat in silence, her eyes colder than usual. "Ethan Cole," she said slowly, "some among my council believe you have been gathering information about our empire." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what, me?" "No, do not lie to me," the queen said softly, but the edge in her voice was sharp. "I'm not lying," Ethan said firmly. "I wouldn't do that to you. Or to Saris." The queen studied his face, every muscle, every breath. Finally, she said quietly, "I want to believe you." He frowned. "Then do." Her gaze softened slightly. "I have learned humans are loyal, but your kind is also unpredictable. You act with emotion, not reason." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but emotion is what saved your daughter." The room went silent. Then the queen nodded. "You are right, human. You speak boldly. Too boldly for most." She stood. "Very well. I will find the truth myself. Until then, stay close to the princess. No one else can protect her as you can." Ethan saluted slightly. "Yes, ma'am." As he turned to leave, the queen spoke softly behind him. "You risked everything for someone not of your kind. That is something my people will never forget." He didn't see it, but for the first time the queen smiled faintly after he left. That night, Saris couldn't sleep. She found Ethan sitting by the garden pool, staring at the stars. "Ethan sad?" she asked. He looked at her and smiled tiredly. "Just thinking." She sat beside him, her tail curling around her legs. "About home?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "About home, and about what comes next." Saris looked at the stars, too. "You have many homes. One here, too." Her small voice warmed his heart. "Yeah, kid. Maybe I do." The next day, Ethan proved once again why the queen trusted him. During the morning ceremony, as the queen and Saris stood before the nobles, an explosion shook the throne hall. Smoke and fire filled the air. Guards screamed. People ran. Ethan reacted instantly, tackling Saris to the ground and covering her with his body. Pieces of crystal ceiling rained down. The blast echoed through the chamber. When the smoke cleared, Ethan's armor was scorched, but he was alive. Sarah was crying, but unharmed. He looked up to see the Queen running toward them, her eyes blazing with fury and fear. "Ethan," she shouted. "I'm fine," he said, coughing. "She's safe." The Queen knelt beside her daughter, checking her pulse. Then she looked at Ethan, at the burns on his arms, the blood on his face. "You shielded her with your body?" He nodded weakly. "Didn't have time to think." Her voice trembled slightly. "No, you never do." Guards rushed in, reporting that the explosion came from a noble's chamber. A rebellion had been planned, one that would have killed the Queen and her daughter. But thanks to Ethan's quick action, both had survived. That night, the Queen visited him in the medical wing. He was sitting on the bed, shirtless, his arms wrapped in bandages. She looked at him quietly for a moment. "My people owe you more than they can ever repay." Ethan smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for them. I did it for her." The Queen nodded slowly. "I know." Then she said something that surprised him. "You remind me of someone. My husband. He was like you. Brave, foolish, and too kind for this world." Ethan's voice softened. "I'm sorry." She looked away. "He died in battle years ago. Since then I've trusted logic, not heart, but you make me question that choice." He didn't know what to say. Finally she stood. "Rest, human. Tomorrow the council will meet again, and this time they will see who truly protects the crown." As she left, Sarah ran in and hugged him tightly. "Ethan's safe," she said, tears in her eyes. He hugged her back gently. "Always, kid. Always." That night, as he watched the stars through the window, Ethan realized something had changed. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He wasn't just a guest in an alien palace. He was part of something bigger, part of a story that crossed species, honor, and the stars themselves. The royal palace of the Vereen Empire was silent. Normally, the great halls were filled with music and bright lights, but now everything felt tense and heavy. Guards stood alert, their armor glowing with faint blue light. Every alien noble whispered, in fear after what had happened. A human soldier had saved the princess again, and many of their own people were involved in the attack. Ethan Cole lay in the medical chamber, his body covered with strange green healing gel. The alien doctors moved quietly around him, whispering about how tough humans were. One of them muttered in awe, "He lost so much blood, yet he still shielded the princess with his body. No Vereen warrior would have survived that." The door opened with a sharp hiss. Queen Xylera entered, her tall form shining under the dim lights. Her silver armor reflected her anger and sadness. The room went silent. Every doctor bowed and stepped back. The Queen moved closer to Ethan's bed and looked down at the wounded human. He was still unconscious. His face looked pale, but his heartbeat was strong. Beside him sat her daughter, Princess Saris, holding Ethan's hand tightly with her small, glowing fingers. She refused to let go, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Mother," Saris whispered softly. "They wanted to hurt him. They said he doesn't belong here." Queen Xylera knelt down beside her daughter. For a moment, the mighty ruler of a galactic empire looked simply like a mother. Her eyes softened. "He belongs wherever kindness lives, my child. And right now that is here." She stood again, her expression turning cold as she looked toward the guards. "Bring me the ones responsible," she ordered. Moments later, several Vereen nobles were dragged into the chamber, their fancy robes torn. They trembled under the Queen's burning gaze. "You tried to kill the one who saved my daughter," she said, her voice calm but deadly. "You betrayed the honor of our empire." One of the nobles tried to speak. "Your Majesty, he is a human, a primitive creature. His closeness to the princess is dangerous." Before he could finish, Xylera raised her hand. The room darkened as the lights dimmed and a wave of psychic energy filled the air. "Enough," she said, her voice echoing like thunder. "This primitive being showed more courage and honor than all of you combined." The nobles fell to their knees, trembling in fear. "The human will not be harmed again," the Queen said. "He will be protected by royal decree. Anyone who disobeys will face my wrath." She turned to the doctors. "Heal him completely. Use every resource you have." Hours passed. Ethan slowly woke up, feeling weak but alive. He blinked, staring at the strange, glowing ceiling. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw Saris asleep beside him, her small head resting on his arm. He smiled softly. "Hey, kiddo," he whispered. "You okay?" Saris woke up instantly, her 4 eyes opening wide. "Ethan," she said happily. "You live, you live!" She hugged him tightly and Ethan chuckled weakly. "Yeah," he said, wincing. "Still alive. Guess I can't die yet. You still need a babysitter." Just then, Queen Xylera entered the room. Ethan tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. "Stay still, human," the Queen said gently. "You have done enough." He nodded slowly. "Your Majesty, I didn't mean to cause trouble." Her eyes softened. "You did not cause trouble. You saved my child. Again?" She looked away for a moment, her voice lowering. "You risked your life without hesitation. Even our best guards would have hesitated." Ethan smiled faintly. "I guess humans don't think much in moments like that. We just act." The Queen watched him for a long moment, studying his face, the honesty in his words. "You are different from what I was told about humans," she said quietly. "They said you were violent, unpredictable, dangerous, but you have shown compassion, courage, and loyalty. You have taught my daughter laughter." Ethan gave a small laugh. "She's the one teaching me now. I didn't think aliens could giggle." The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "It has been centuries since laughter echoed in this palace. I am grateful." Ethan nodded. "Then maybe that's a good start." A few days later, Ethan was able to walk again. The palace slowly returned to normal, but things were not the same. The nobles avoided him now, some out of respect, others out of fear. He didn't care. He just wanted to keep Saris safe. But one morning, the Queen called him to the royal chamber. When he entered, several alien diplomats were already there, tall, thin beings wearing robes of gold and white. Their faces were serious. "These are representatives of the Galactic Council," the Queen said. "They wish to speak with you." One of the diplomats stepped forward. "Sergeant Ethan Cole of the Terran Federation," he began. "The Council has decided that your stay here has caused political concern. The bond between you and the royal family is viewed as dangerous." Ethan frowned. "Dangerous? I just protected a kid." "Yes," the diplomat said, "but you have also influenced their culture. The Varine Empire is changing, and many believe your presence may cause instability." Queen Xylera's eyes narrowed. "Instability? You mean hope? Compassion? That is what this human has given us." "Your Majesty," the diplomat said carefully, "please understand. The Council requests the humans return to his world, for the sake of balance." Ethan looked at the Queen. "It's okay," he said softly. "Maybe they're right. I never wanted to cause problems." The Queen turned sharply. "You will not leave because of their fear." Ethan gave a small smile. "It's not fear, Your Majesty. It's politics. I don't want your people to fight over me. If my leaving keeps peace, then that's what I'll do." Saris, who had been standing near the throne, suddenly ran forward, her eyes full of tears. "No! Ethan, stay! Ethan, promise, stay!" He knelt down and hugged her. "I know, little one, but I have to go home. It's not goodbye, okay? Just see you later." She buried her face in his chest, shaking her head. "No later. Now." The Queen looked away. For the first time, her voice trembled. "Human, you saved my daughter. You saved me from losing her. You changed us. How do you expect me to just let you go?" Ethan looked up at her. "Because I trust you, and she does too. You don't need me to protect her anymore." Queen Xylera's eyes shimmered faintly. She stepped closer and placed a silver pendant around his neck, identical to the one her daughter wore. Then take this, she said softly. It carries our royal mark. Wherever you go, it means you are one of us. Ethan touched the pendant, speechless. I don't know what to say. Say you will return, the Queen said. He smiled sadly. I'll try. The next morning, the human transport ship arrived to take Ethan home. The entire palace gathered in the courtyard. Soldiers stood in perfect formation. The Queen stood tall beside her daughter, both wearing royal cloaks of silver and blue. Ethan saluted sharply. Thank you, Your Majesty, for everything. The Queen stepped forward. No, human, we thank you. Saris ran up and hugged him one last time. Goodbye, Ethan. He smiled, patting her head gently. Goodbye, little star. As he walked up the ramp, the Queen's voice echoed across the courtyard. He belongs to the stars, but my heart does not wish to let him go. The ship's engines roared. Ethan looked out from the window as the planet grew smaller below him. His chest felt heavy. He had left behind something more than duty. He had left behind a family he never expected to find among the stars. Months passed since Ethan Cole had left the Vereen homeworld. Back among humans, he served again with the Terran Navy, aboard the massive battleship Resolute. Life felt empty without the laughter of the little alien princess or the calm voice of Queen Xylera. Every night he held the silver pendant the Queen had given him. Its glow had faded, but he still wore it close to his heart. He often wondered what Saris was doing, if she was safe, if she still remembered him. Then one day, everything changed. It started with a loud alarm echoing through the ship. Red lights flashed and the crew rushed to stations. Distress signal received, shouted the communications officer. Priority Alpha from the Vereen homeworld. Ethan's head snapped up. Repeat that, he said. The officer read the message aloud. The Vereen Empire is under heavy attack by an unknown fleet. They request immediate assistance from any Terran vessels in range. For a moment, Ethan's heart stopped. He could picture the shining towers of the palace, the bright skies, and the small child who once clung to his arm. Without thinking, he stood up. Captain, we have to go. Captain Ramirez, a stern woman with gray hair, looked at him seriously. Cole, this isn't your fight. The Council hasn't authorized intervention. Ma'am, Ethan said firmly, I owe them my life. And they're our friends, whether the Council says it or not. The captain sighed deeply. You're asking me to defy orders? Yes, Ethan said. Just like they defied theirs to save a human stranger. There was silence for a long moment. Then Captain Ramirez nodded slowly. Helm, set course for Vereen Prime, full speed. The crew erupted in movement. The engines roared. The Resolute turned toward the Vereen system. The fleet followed, 3 human warships breaking formation and jumping into hyperspace. Ethan stood by the window, the stars stretching into light. He whispered to himself, Hold on, Saris, I'm coming. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. The Vereen homeworld burned. Giant enemy warships, black and sharp like blades, orbited the planet, firing plasma beams into the cities below. The Vereen defense fleet was shattered. Explosions lit the space around them. Multiple enemy contacts. The radar officer shouted. They're tearing the royal fleet apart. Captain Ramirez looked to Ethan. You better be right about this. Ethan's eyes hardened. I am. The Resolute dove straight into the fight. Human warships opened fire, their railguns and missiles cutting through the enemy lines. The sudden arrival of the humans changed everything. The attackers didn't expect them. Ethan manned the tactical console, giving commands like a machine. Target the lead dreadnought. Focus fire on their engines. Missiles streaked across space. One by one, the dark ships exploded in waves of light. The communication line came alive, panicked voices from the Vereen fleet. This is Queen's Guard ship Aelara. Who are you? Identify. This is the Terran Navy, Ethan answered. We're here to help. Tell the Queen her human is back. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then a voice, soft and trembling, replied, She already knows. Down on the planet, Queen Xylera stood on the palace balcony, watching the skies burn. Her guards shouted around her, but her gaze was fixed upward. The battle was hopeless just minutes ago. Then through the clouds she saw bright blue streaks of light, human ships, their weapons cutting through the enemy. Her heart skipped. She recognized the symbol on the largest ship, a Terran wolf painted on its hull. She whispered his name softly. Ethan. Beside her, young Princess Saris looked up in wonder. Mother, human ships. Ethan, come. The Queen's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stand tall. Perhaps, my child, she said, though her voice was shaking. Perhaps he truly meant it when he said he would return. In orbit, the Resolute took heavy fire. The hull shook violently and alarm screamed. Shields at 30%, shouted the engineer. We can't hold much longer. Ethan gritted his teeth. We hold until the civilians are safe. Tell the Varine fleet to regroup behind us. Human and Varine ships fought side by side now, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. It was chaos, but it was also beautiful. Two species, once strangers defending each other. A massive enemy cruiser turned toward the planet, preparing a final strike aimed directly at the royal palace. Ethan saw it on the screen. They're targeting the Queen's city. Captain, we can't intercept in time. The officer shouted. Ethan made a decision. Then we'll ram them. Captain Ramirez's eyes widened. That's suicide. Ethan smiled. Yeah, but it'll work. She looked at him for a long second, then nodded slowly. Do it. The Resolute's engines flared to maximum. The giant ship sped forward, colliding with the cruiser's weapon array. The explosion was enormous, a blinding flash that lit the entire sky. The human crew was thrown to the floor. Alarms blared. The hull broke apart, fire spreading through the corridors. Evacuate, Ramirez yelled. All hands to escape pods. But Ethan didn't move. He ran to the cargo bay where a small shuttle was docked. He had one goal left. He grabbed his rifle and the pendant around his neck. Computer, he said, plot a course to the royal palace. Surface entry. Warning, the AI said. Atmospheric entry without shield protection will result in fatal... Just do it, Ethan interrupted. The shuttle launched. Flames surrounded it as it cut through the atmosphere. Queen Xylera stood outside the palace as the sky filled with falling debris. Her guards begged her to take shelter, but she didn't move. Then she saw a small ship falling toward them, trailing fire. It crashed into the courtyard, sliding across the marble ground. The hatch opened, and out stepped Ethan Cole, covered in soot and blood, but alive. The Queen's heart almost stopped. He stumbled forward, smiling weakly. Told you. I'd come back. Saris ran to him, crying tears of joy. Ethan, you came. He knelt and hugged her tightly. Of course I did. The Queen approached slowly. For a moment she could not speak. The man standing before her looked broken but still unshaken. You are mad, she whispered. No sane being would fly through a battlefield for us. Ethan laughed weakly. Guess humans are a little mad then. Before anyone could say more, another explosion shook the ground. The last enemy ship was descending, preparing to bombard the palace. Ethan stood up, grabbing his weapon. Get inside. I'll hold them off. No, the Queen said firmly. We will fight together. She raised her royal staff, which transformed into a glowing spear. The guards joined, forming a circle. The sky lit up as the enemy fired. But the human fleet had seen the danger. What was left of the Resolute launched its last missiles. The enemy ship exploded before its weapons could hit. The palace shook one final time, then fell silent. The war was over. Hours later, the ruins were quiet. Fires burned in the distance, but the Varine people were alive. The humans had saved them. Ethan stood on the balcony looking at the sunrise. His body was exhausted, his armor broken. The Queen approached him, walking slowly. You saved us all, she said softly. Again, he smiled. Couldn't just watch from orbit. She looked at him for a long time. You've done more than any ambassador, any warrior, any hero. You showed us what humanity truly means. She stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. You once told me you'd leave for peace. But I will not let you go this time. Ethan blinked. Your Majesty, she raised a hand. No, not as a prisoner, not as a guest. As something greater. I name you protector of the Varine crown. You will stand beside me, not under me. Saris clapped happily. Ethan, stay. Ethan, family now. Ethan looked at both of them, the child he had saved and the Queen who now offered him a place among the stars. Slowly, he smiled. Guess I'm not good at saying goodbye. The Queen smiled back. Then don't. Years later, the galaxy would remember the day the humans and Varine stood together. They would tell the story of one human soldier who refused to walk away from compassion. He watched over a lost alien child. He defied kings and councils. He returned through fire and war.